We are officially back. Episode 11, the D'Acquisto series podcast. We have a little different format for you here today. We have a different third voice. I'm going to introduce him, Byron Horton. You may know him from Whitetail Experience YouTube page and on social media. Say hi, Byron.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. It's an exciting spot to be in, being on this podcast with some real killers. So I appreciate you guys having me.
Well, this is going to be fun.
Yeah. So a little background here. So Byron is our new co-host. Yeah, we're really excited now. For those of you who don't know, we have our own platform now, hosting platform. So you can find us now, the D'Acquisto series podcast, on Shopify, iTunes, all the good spots to go listen to podcasts. So that's good news. We really wanted to try and start getting regular with this content, right?
More consistency. Guys were asking where you at, looking for the next one, and we're missing a week here, missing a week there. And so we're going to try and get more consistent. A couple of months,
Yeah, no, I think this will be a good outlet. And I've worked with you guys now for a couple years, and it just seems like people are thirsty for this information. And so that's what we're going to give them. This is free information and no better source than talking to you guys,
Yeah, man, I'm excited. So, down with the episode, I'm pretty excited to talk about this topic. I did a post earlier on the Mobile Hunters United. And on a side note, thanks for everybody who participates on that page. Our goal with that is to, really just kind of have a, bias-free platform that guys can go and talk mobile hunting, tactics, gear, tips, all that stuff. Because that's what it's all about. And, there's a lot of pages out there that are just so biased, and if you're not using this or that. So we appreciate you guys for coming and supporting Mobile Hunters United. And if you haven't been there, go check it out. But
great group of guys.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I'd say some high caliber guys. A lot of the addiction guys are on there. I know there's a pretty cool thread the other day just on scrapes and scrape hunting and what has worked for a couple different guys, but it was all high level dudes commenting.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Turley was one, Dan Bayes. So some really good dudes out there commenting.
That's where did you mention that there's a lot of high level guys on there? You know what I like about it? There's a lot of beginning guys coming on there that are just coming out of the gate, and they're getting information. And these guys are taking the time to give them some tips and talk strategy.
Well, that's what's so cool about it for somebody looking for information. They're like it. Instantly, we had a lot of, like Byron said, high level sort of players or guys just known for being consistent more than anything in harvesting big deer, and willing to be open and just kind of share and talk and participate. So, I mean, that was the goal. It was,
Byron, years ago, we didn't give out secrets. We didn't want anybody to know what we knew. We're killing deer. You want to give your neighbor an advantage to take down the one you're after, so
it's funny because
silent partner.
So you look at things as simple as that. Like, I was trying to get one of these mics to work for the podcast. And I'm looking at the instructions, and I'm literally, and I don't know if this is just me personally, but I'm messing with the damn thing. And I was spending like 30 minutes, and I'm like, let me just go to fucking YouTube. And I went to YouTube, and I was like, oh, okay, how to do this on road. And I realized that that's how a lot of people are coming into hunting right now. And they're going on Facebook, and I look back at it, and I was talking to a buddy of mine, and I'm like, you know what? I don't think I've ever looked up how to do something on the internet, or I just, you just like even mechanics, like
I do it all the time.
Well, yeah, but now it's now I'm like, oh, Google it, so it's cool to have, like, the goal is.
But then I see a lot of stuff that's wrong too. So I just
see, I suppose,
the barrier to entry is easier. I feel like I got a late start to the hunting game, and I was tricked by a lot of hunting television. And so it wasn't until I got to some of those second tier sources, some of the better forums, in the mid 2000s, that actually had guys that weren't killing deer and trying to sell you products. They actually knew what they were doing. And that's, now you have these groups on Facebook that you can get that information a little easier. And so that's why I'm really jacked about that page.
Yeah, in general, today's day and age, like the trial and error era is fading away, because it's, the information's at your fingertips now. So, but yeah, so getting to, aside from that, I don't know where we got off on that tangent, but the bump and dump, the topic that I think, like I said in my post,
the what? Never heard of it.
What is that? Just, I guess the idea and the concept and the theory and everything encompassing it has just always been somewhat controversial, and it's cool. Like, I look at it and knowing that, this is kind of Dad's thing, and he did this, and he was the first to do it back in the day and the first to publicize it. And when it kind of came out, everybody's like, well, what the, like that? No. Like, it was just such a weird thing. So it excites me to be able to talk about it and to break it down. I mean, Byron, I'm sure we've talked about this, and
I've never successfully made it happen. I have definitely attempted.
You've done a lot of bumping, but no dumping, right?
Well, and that's a big thing too. And I think, and we'll talk about that, because I did a lot of bumping too, and not capitalizing, and that's where I think I kind of tweaked like how I'm doing it, where it might differ from the old man to even listeners, man. Like,
so I think the big misconception is people think it's just that one bump them out of their bed, come right back and kill them in that. This thing is from decades of me being not a real patient hunter, wanting to get down and look around and poke around. And you always talk about, somebody just mentioned something, a question, how far is too far? You scout and you're right where you think you're going to be. And all of a sudden you turn around to like slip out of there, and you're face to face with a 160-inch buck looking right in the eye, better than his bed, and then he busts out of there and you blow it. So I've had decades of experiences getting too close, a little too close. But from doing that, I also noticed that, man, them deer were not leaving their home range. They weren't disappearing on me. It just became a game, So
yeah. So let me back you up there. I think we got to define what is a bump and dump.
There you go, Byron.
Okay.
You're ready getting the points, because hold on.
Oh, okay.
I want to speak on this, because that's where I'm going to call out. Let me see if I can find your name. But one of those first questions that intrigued me was it was a specific on the bed. And I wanted to touch base on this when we talked about, and I even have it in my notes here that I don't look at, but I wanted to define the bump and dump, because I think so many people get too caught up on the actual bed. Yeah. Like, you do not have to kill the deer on his bed for it to be a bump and dump.
Absolutely not. Like,
it's about capitalizing on that area. It's about the act, I think. Let me think then you come in, because you're the inventor, but this is how I see it. So I guess it would be the act of, it doesn't have to be purposely, but the act of kicking a deer out of its bed, seeing where he was bedding, and then going in to kill him in that area. But the bed is not the key player. It's manipulating that spot and killing him.
The bump and dump during a rut has nothing to do with the bed. Now, there may be a doe bed in there, but when you get those times, there may be a 4-day period, you're hunting a pretty hot property, and everything just goes dead. So this is the old lockup stage, right? And get your ass down and go poke around that whole property, and pretty soon you're going to bump a whole bunch of bucks that ain't going to run off.
Yeah. Okay. You're getting into tactic for time of year now. I'm talking. So, but if you really sum it down, I guess I would think it's more so purposely, but the act of purposely
jumping a deer
out of it. Yeah. Like finding in search of a deer to bump him out of his bed, to find out where he's at. So then you can then kill him with a stand set up.
So, but I want to be clear before we get into the whole thing, so people know. So, I do that to locate where a buck's bedded. But there's also a bump and dump. I'll literally bump this deer 2 weeks earlier, and I come back in 2 weeks later and dump them. So it's not like it's always a 1 day, next day thing.
Like a 24-hour, 48-hour
Yeah, this could be 2 days. This could be before the season you're bumping them, and then you come back and you do the dump.
So. And that's where, so if you think of that, so yes. So if we go back and we look at it as its definition, to kick up a deer purposefully most of the time. I mean, sometimes I've stumbled on them. I've been just, knowing that, like, oh man, I can't figure out where he is. Well, let me just pound the ground some more. And then I stumble on that spot that I was looking for the whole time. And it was sort of an accident, but I still found where he was, kicked him out, even though I wasn't intentionally looking for it. Or let's say you're scouting a piece, not looking for a deer, but just looking at the piece. You can bump a deer and then use that knowledge and go kill him the next day, or kill him right then and there.
I look back at a lot of these big deer, and a lot of these were killed with a bump and dump. The one from Wisconsin was literally, I thought in my mind, I knew that deer was bedded, but for me, I have to have it for sure. Mm-hmm. And I dove into the swamp right where I thought he was being. I busted him right out of there, then just left him alone. And a week and a half later, I killed him. He was still bedded there, and I killed him coming out to the crop fields. So it's a, delayed bump and dump, but I knew it for sure that he was laying. So
yep. And then, so I guess I don't know where to. So segueing from here.
So let's get a little bit, like I think you asked earlier about, or off the air, you asked earlier about how that concept came to be. So most guys do not scout. They think that, you do too much walking around, poking around, and you wreck everything. I'm just the opposite. So over the years, and maybe some of you guys have experienced that, do a lot of scouting. You'll walk a property and you'll move through, and then all of a sudden you just jump this big buck. And then weeks later, you're walking a property, doing things, and all of a sudden you jump this big buck in the same spot again. Or you're taking a creek back in to head to a property, and in a curve of that creek, in open hardwoods, you bump this big, huge buck goes running off. You do that 3-4 times, and it's like, well, what the hell's going on here? This buck is here all the time. He can't be pushed out of here. That's where I just started discovering that, man, this is not like people, because years ago it was like that taboo, stay out of the bedding area, don't bump them, they're going to leave your property forever. I started finding out from my own personal experiences and watching coyotes and packs of dogs run properties. I'd watch in Illinois, a piece that I had, a group of coyotes would come through daily, every day on this bedding area I was hunting. I'd watch them blow all the deer out. These big bucks would get shagged out of there, and then literally 10 minutes, they'd loop right back around and go climb right back into the bed they were in. So, it was working for animals, and it started working for me.
See that segues into what I wanted to talk about too. So first you could define bump and dump, and then I guess you talk about the
tactics.
The tactic of bump and dump, or just in general of bedding deer. And people, where they get scared and where the taboo comes from is that they think, like you said, I don't think if you take a step back and you look at it in a reasonable fashion, to what the theory, I guess, entails is, okay, so through these scouting missions, through these years that you were noticing this, when a deer beds in a spot, it's for a reason. That deer has his plan, right? So, I mean, he gets bumped out. The reason he's coming back is because, like, I guess, that idea of, well, that deer is more secure with that spot than even before because he escaped a potential threat. So what better to do than to go to that spot, or that spot that...
Right, but you made a point a while back that made sense, and I never thought about it that way. People think that I'm going to go in and I'm constantly bumping this deer. Once I find where that buck's bedded, now it's totally covert. If I put a stand in there that day, I'm only diving in morning. You never go back in there for an evening hunt and try and hunt those areas. You have a virgin sit every time then. You know where the deer beds. You're preset. You can slide in there when the moon phase is right and be right on top of these deer when they're climbing into their beds. So it's not like you do it a day and then don't take your stand or find the area, leave, come back 2 days later and set up and sit, you know what I mean? You don't want to over harass it. So
yeah, and that's the thing. People, well, you can, and that's where I think there's such a misconception, because then it's like, oh, okay, well, I can bump the deer. Well, then people start bumping the shit out of deer, and deer won't take that so much. Like you just mentioned 3 times. Like, I think that's even, if you consistently just keep badgering a deer and he's eventually just gonna be like, oh, well, fuck this. I'm not going back to that spot.
Right. I've seen a couple though that I've actually on purpose jacked with, and I could not believe the shit they would put up with,
And we'll get back to that. But I also think that's temperament and time of year, because those deer are getting squirrely and they're territorial and they got testosterone flowing. Like, it's not a deer thinking logically, just thinking food, bed, life, survive. Like, early season, I think.
But here's the thing, your average guy is going to hear this, and he's not going to have the experience with it. So it's tough
and that's where
to get in your head that this stuff works. So
well, yeah, and that's where I like to go into. Like, when I always heard of bump and dump. Like, I don't think I was ever really like, you would like say it to me, but not really be like, oh yeah,
that's my cocky attitude.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess I was always thinking like too, like, oh, okay, well, like fucking yeah, I got to do the bump and dump, like whatever, like I got to do that, and I would fuck up constantly. I would like
he'd bump them and I'd dump them.
No, this is different hunting, different properties.
So let me back your dad up. Obviously, like this bumping of deer, this came from scouting, I got to believe, and I got to believe this came from infield scouting. Why, like in your whitetail career, was that something that you saw being more successful? So the more you scouted, the better your hunts were. And I got to think that the first time you tried this bump and dump, you were doing some scouting and you bumped him off a few, maybe the same.
Yeah, this wasn't a logical thought to do this on purpose. This is from constantly scouting and bumping and jumping deer. And when you're going to walk over property, you're going to kick a lot of deer up. And then when you start being able to, I'm real perceptive on anything I do. So I read sign that way. When an occurrence happens, a deer ran off. And it's like, why did he run off? I was just telling a guy about a property that they're hunting now. As I can tell you the tree in there, that if any deer in an entire property is kicked, pushed, or really volatility gun season on, every deer on that property will cross between a 50-yard swatch in that thing, going from point A to point B to C to D, whatever it is. And that comes from experience of reading that sign and watching what happens when it does. And the same with a deer. You keep bumping a deer off the same spot, are you going to, all of a sudden you can say, you know what? I think I better hunt over here. This is the third time the same big buck has jumped out of here. He's not wanting to leave, So
well take us to that day. Take us to that first time you're out scouting and you said, you know what, I just kicked up a good one here. I'm gonna hunt it. I know this is not the norm, but like what went through your head? What kind of hunting thought process was like, okay, I just seen him run over this hill. I'm gonna set up in here and try and kill him. Like, what was going through your head? What did that setup look like?
So now I know where the deer is bedded on a specific. And here's another thing: people don't realize that when you're conscious of this. When you jump a deer off a certain area, take note of what the wind direction was that day and why he might not be there half the week. The wind direction might be different. He might situate on a different mound or a different hill. But where this came from more was, I am so attuned to hunting on red hot sign that you're going to end up pushing that envelope to be that close and that intimate with a deer. You're going to bump some deer. You're going to be so close to them. I don't know how many guys are out there that do it, but a lot of times when I get down in the morning, there's always deer bedded within 50 yards of me. And when I'm hunting a lot of evening posts, I'm watching literally deer get up out of their beds within 100 yards of my stand and moving on out. So
when was the first bump and dump attempt? Like when were you in Wisconsin still, the big woods north, or had you moved down south? When was the first day you're like, I'm going?
It's been so long. There's so many occurrences that it's I mean, literally, if I just sit and I look at some of these deer on a wall, and they all kind of had a little bit to do with that. Not the same day. It might have been a week later, or like I said, just constantly scouting, kicking a deer up out of that. Most of the time, walking in and having the same buck on the same hillside, 3 times in a row. That's 3 bumps, and then you dive in there and you hunt them, and you could either get an opportunity on them, pass them up, or kill them. So. It's been going on for a lot of years. So
what about you? Like, do you remember hearing about the tactic, kind of understanding it enough to say, you know what, I'm going to try it. I'm going to apply this method. And maybe how did that first attempt go?
Are you asking me or him?
No, Cody.
Oh, I was going to say, because, nobody was doing any bump and dump when I got that.
But, you had talked earlier in this podcast, you've had a lot of bump and dump, either fails or things you've learned where maybe the encounter didn't go your way. Do you have any sort of like growing pain type memories of this thing?
Yes. No, it took me from knowing about it at a young age, but I don't think ever really asking about it. Like I never once said, hey, how do I do the bump and dump? How do I do this? Because I'm too stubborn for that. I wouldn't do that. So I just started, and I thought it was all about the bed. And just like I think everybody else thinks it's about, I was like, I got to find where he's bedded. And the mission is to kill him right on that bed. Like that was my fucking thing for like 3 years. I was like, and I'd connect before. So, and at that point in time, I'm not too proud to say, like, the first nice buck that walked by me was done. Like that was my mentality back then. Mm-hmm. And even though I found a buck, like I wasn't Mr. like, okay, it's got to be this one. Like I wasn't about that at that point in time. It was like, if it's 160, it's dying. Like that's where my head was at. But I really wanted to bump and dump, and I had multiple tags and I had multiple states, and I just was like hard onto it. So with that was like, I was constantly trying to, and I was obsessed with specifically doing it. Like I wanted the wind in my nose, and I wanted to sneak up on this sucker, and I wanted to push him, like literally like scare him out of the bed. And I wanted to toss the stand up, and I wanted him to come back like 15 minutes later, and I wanted to kill him. Just like that's how I envisioned all the stories when Dad would brag about all these kills and shit. Mm-hmm. So that's what I wanted. Like, that's what I was going for. And I found out in the course of the first year, and then like, and this was a couple years, I was going about it all wrong. Like, You can do, I mean, as far as capitalizing on it. And I wasn't manipulating these areas properly because I was too obsessed with the bed. It was like, I'd find these deer, I'd kick them up, and then I'd set up there, and I wouldn't be in an invincible spot because I was obsessed about the bed. And I also started to not like, I never sit there. I mean, other than like a rut situation, I developed this thought of like, okay, I think I'm going to kick that deer up. Like when it started working for me. Yeah. When I finally killed the first buck off of that, and I did. I mean, I scouted, same thing I wanted to do, wind in my nose, and I actually pushed him off the bed. And I was like, okay, it's all working. And this happened several times. And then I'd set up, he'd come and he'd bust me, or I'd set up, he'd come and I wouldn't get a shot, and the spot would burn out, and then the rut would kick in and he'd leave. And then this time it finally worked out. I remember sitting there and I was so obsessed with shooting that bed, but then I started thinking about it logically. I'm like, okay, well, I don't need to shoot that bed. Like, this is the only main trail coming into this little area. Like, I'll just back the hell up, sit on that trail. And sure as shit, I backed up, sat on that trail, and I killed him at 7:15. And okay. And that right there was a strategic purpose, bump and dump, went out on the property looking for him. But I didn't kill him over his bed that time because I couldn't. Like, the situation didn't allow it. And I think another reason, so I think the two things that were messing me up early were being too close to the spot that I find. And then the second thing would be jumping in there right away. Like I just, so many times I burnt it out, like doing that. And then I might kick them up twice, like they wouldn't fully commit or something. But I personally think 99% of the times you do that, that deer has like a B pattern and he's going to go off and do what he's going to do. But the next morning is definitely the best spot. So I just stopped.
If the wind, so like I talked about the wind, if you jump something off of its bedding area or its actual bed, and that wind is going to be the same it was the day before, perfect scenario will be right back in there. So if you're going to start messing around with this stuff, you're going to look for a pattern that's going to be a couple of steady days of your northwesterly wind. Find that bed, and then you'll be on there. Don't scout on that day, and then the news is telling you it's going to be the total opposite wind the next day. That buck is probably not going to come back to that bed because it's not going to be right for that wind. If you notice that tuning fork buck, that buck had a mound it was bedding on, and there was beds positioned every way. That was a premium spot because that deer would bed there on multiple wind directions. It's the gold, yep. It's the gold, yeah.
And I was going to jump in too and say that same thing, like you said with the tuning fork buck. There's also different types of bedding areas that you'll find. Like the buck that he killed, it was bedding in a
knob.
Not the tuning fork buck. I'm talking about that big one this year. And you'll see it probably in his episode. But like the majority of the time early season, that deer was bedding in an alfalfa strip in the middle of corn.
Oh, yeah, you had that pinned down.
Out in the open fields, like in the open in alfalfa. Like, and I mean a lot. So, but what you're getting at with the tuning fork buck, I think, is that there's bedding areas that you can tell, like, oh my God, okay, this is he's here all the time. Right. It's tore up. Like he's got beds for different wind directions.
So if you bump a deer, so there's a perfect couple spots here. You'll have a trail going up into a buck's bed, and the back of it is just thick, nasty. It's a one direction bed. I'm coming in here and I'm going out there. Now, if something comes and gets me trapped here, a couple of bounds out the back and through the thick shit, and the buck's gone. So that deer is not leaving 90% of his time out back through that thick stuff. That's his escape route. That deer is going in and out of that one spot. Now you bump a deer out of a situation like that. You look at that bed and it's like, I don't have to be right here. I could be, like you said, I could be on the trail or funnel coming to, and he's coming in and out this one direction to that. And it's surgically removed, man. Just, set up accordingly.
And I always listen to you say that too. And I think that's one of the most awesome quotes there is like the surgically removing, like, okay, like you're looking at it so granular, like, okay, you're trying to be precise. Right. And that's where like I went from no success to success every single year hunting like bedding areas is like details to the setup, like everything. Like that's when I started really taking it to the next level as far as trying to manipulate that spot specifically and knowing. And that's the thing too, though, when you find these spots, you have to know how to tell too. Also, like he said, that was one direction.
Yeah.
And if, you have to take that spot for what it is. Every situation changes. He might be coming. There might be a bunch of trails that he's coming in and out of, or
they're always swing down usually, and then come in with it winter and nose. So whatever the direction is there, you got to set up accordingly. But what about the Tamarack Swamps you used to hunt? All the same cattails, marsh, swamp mess, and you got a buck that's bedding in on a little couple spots on a tree there. That deer could enter that spot. I always say it's the spokes of a wheel. The closer you can get to that hub, the better chance you have. I mean, it's just a numerical chance of getting something. The further out you get, the chances just go to hell that you ain't ever going to tie into that deer. So you want to get as close to that bed as you can. But that deer might come in from a 50-yard swatch, not a trail, just a big movement. And years ago, I used to find those spots by I was just telling Justin about this. I would literally go in these swamps on purpose. These are bucks that would get to their beds at sunup, and on the quietest day I could, and I would just sit in there and I would listen. And you could hear those heading through, average sized deer, and Mr. Big would come slopping through that swamp, and I literally just listen, and where it stopped, I would identify a tree, and I would know that would be the spot I'd have to get to the next day and set up, and I'm in the game. Otherwise, there's no trails, there's no tracks, it's all water knee high. You're not going to figure that out by just wandering around there aimlessly
So it sounds like and I don't have a lot of swamp hunting type experience, but the key to doing any sort of bed hunting there is you don't have some of the J hook stuff that you get in farm country and hill country. Andre, did you do some bump and dump in your big wood stuff in northern Wisconsin, or Cody, have you ever hunted, say, more of a big timber, big hills, stuff like that it's effective, at all those different kind of.
So I started out in like the Nicolay National Forest up in upper Wisconsin, big country, big open hardwoods. And deer would trickle through big swatches, funnel on down to where swamps would come in through. But it was really tough to get a lot of concentration. So what I used to do to scout there is if I wanted to find a spot to hunt at 9 o'clock in the morning, I would still hunt all morning, and all of a sudden I would run into deer at, let's say, 9 o'clock in this area, and I'd bump a bunch of deer out of there, okay? The next day I'd be set up on that spot, and like clockwork at 9 o'clock, those deer would be moving through again, and I'd run into them. Now, if I want to find a spot early, I start still hunting earlier, and I start running into deer in those open hardwoods. You pick that spot. If you want to find an evening spot, same thing. It was so spread out that you either did some good glassing and made your move, or it was kind of a bump and dump for me. I would literally go till I started bumping deer, set up there, and I'm telling you, like clockwork, the next day, those deer that were moving through them open hardwoods are moving through the same swatch again, and you're in the game, man. You're constantly on deer. The hotter the sign,
I think that's like
everywhere.
I call it like nomadic hunting. Like you're really trying to you're moving around with the deer or you're finding them, but I think those giant tracts of land. I mean, although I don't hunt a lot,
but those deer go through them. Like I said, there's no trails there because it's all they're browsers. It's open hardwoods, and it's
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, in a spot where you have thousands and thousands and thousands of acres, like it becomes about finding deer population,
right.
not. I mean, you got to find where the deer are. You have to. I think there's so much ground, So, and if you're not
especially
moving
early, when everything's
So let's get back to the bump and dump. And okay. Cody, you had talked on this as far as one of your biggest learning points was not necessarily hunting the bed, but catching him on that route to the bed. And if you look through the comments on Facebook, I would say a third of them or whatever are asking about the J hook and are bucks always J hooking? How do I set up on the J hook? Could you guys talk a little bit more about that factor of setting up on these bump and dumps?
Well, like you said too, that was a good analogy, like with the spoke, and I mean, when you find that spot, that is your hub, right? And you do want to get on that, and that was what
you got to be on the right side of that J, or you're done. So
but I'm well, as far as like you said, sticking to the bed though, where
that's on a bed specifically, but again. There's so many different types of bumps and dump, but you're talking specifically about the bed where a deer's looping back in. So the whole bump and dump concept is to locate the deer where it's at and then to start hunting. And then you just take your tools, your stand, and you manipulate that spot. So
When you say manipulate, talk to me about that. Is that tree to tree, or you purposely?
Well, you can't just go under the deer's bed and then you're going to get basically just, downwind of it and hope that if that thing loops in the wrong way, you're screwed. That many of them deer will loop, and they'll loop even wide just to try and cover the whole area, make sure it's safe. And a lot of times I am on like the sliver. And if you went too close, he bugs out, he's got you. And if you go too far, you don't get your shot. You're not close enough to get the kill done. So it's, it comes with experience. The more you hunt it, the more you screw up, the more you learn. So.
Okay. But I guess, is it a myth? And I don't know this because I haven't tried enough, but like, do all bucks J hook, or do sometimes they go in there willy nilly, or is that?
Oh, no. So years ago, the big, I'm going to give a different example of it, but when you hunt over scrapes, you got to be downwind of the scrape, That's where all the deer come and they scent check it. Okay. So, I'm downwind of the scrape, right? And I watch these bucks come flying in from freaking total opposite direction, work the scrape and leave without being able to shoot them. If you're hunting a scrape, you better be able to shoot that scrape. And if you're hunting a bed, you better be able to get it done, or you're going to, look at that big, one of the biggest bucks I got there. I mean, I was 5 yards off of killing that thing, and I had to change up.
I get what you're saying. I think it's a different point, right? You're talking J hook coming into a bedding area.
Yeah.
And you're talking about shooting a scrape.
Well, no, I was giving an analogy that you think that you're going to be able to just hunt downwind of it or get downwind. You still got to be able to get that arrow in that deer. That deer could get into that bed.
Yeah, but
without you getting an arrow in it.
Simply, I would answer that question. I would say absolutely not, because I think that is what a lot of deer do. But I have actually killed deer. That one was on film, I believe. He didn't do some crazy big J hook. He came in with the wind in his nose in a straight line, and I was playing the edge of a hedge thicket and a field and a big nice drop off that I knew I was clear as day. So I got up in that.
Yeah,
But he wasn't gonna go. I knew that deer wasn't gonna go down in J hook just to get.
He's missing the point here. The J hook is okay. So where a J hook's gonna come in? If a deer's already downwind, he's coming in. A deer leaves. He enters his bed with leaving his points of vulnerability together. Okay, he's got a track that he's going to leave behind that an animal could follow, and he's got his scent of his physical body he's going to leave behind. So there's like two points of that a predator can take advantage of a deer. Where the J hook comes in, if a deer's not all deer are coming from just downwind to a bed. If he could be coming from this total opposite way, but when he enters that bed, he wants to leave a trail, loop around, where literally he can watch anything following his tracks and bug the hell out of there before it gets to him. So now he's going to loop into wind. Now that the animal's going to come around, they're going to be coming up, and you can spot him coming, and then he just bugs the hell out of there. He's just he's playing a game, Otherwise, you left your trail the other way, and you're facing the other way. A coyote come up right up behind you. You wouldn't even know the damn thing was there. You wouldn't be able to smell it.
Yeah. I think I guess the biggest learning point that me as a guy trying to evolve there picks up is those bucks leave those J hooks within probably visual sight. Like you said, they're trying to pick up on that coyote that's following their track in there, and so being within visual distance of where you believe embedded. Okay, I've kind of putting that in my playbook here. That's good information. Should we kind of walk through kind of some of the basics to setting up a bump and dump, how you guys go about the scout, whether it's an intentional bump versus kind of a bump by scouting accidentally, what your guys'
okay, that's one way. So we can cover it by season.
Yeah,
let's
cover it by
so let's say a new property, never been on it before. I'm going to run down there 2 weeks before I'm going to hunt an opening, and I'm going to just run the piss out of it. I'm going to kick up every deer I can, figure out where everything's bedded, where the majority is are. Now, I did my bumping. I have my knowledge. I can set up some stands, but when I come back, I don't have to learn it while I'm hunting. I already know that this is a bedding area. This is where I jumped a nice buck. That's your bump, and now you're coming back down to dump.
Now, when you're scouting, do you have a technique as far as always keeping that wind in your face, or do you prefer to do it on a windier day, mornings, evenings, let those deer get bedded? Talk to me a little bit about that initial.
So if you keep the wind too much in your face, a whitetail's going to smell you before you get there, and he's going to bug out. You might not even know he's bedded there. So I like to do more of a crosswind, where you're running crosswind, and then when you bump those deer, they don't have the advantage of smelling you. And dude, I'm telling you, I can just about crawl up on some of these deer and they ain't even got a clue, because you're coming sideways on them. They got the wind from their back trying to get predation. They're looking back on their trail, and then you come in sides and you bump them. Now you see what you're looking at. A lot of times these deer are bugging out on you way before you even get there, because they smell you and you're not even in the game then. You don't even know that you bumped something. So
see, that's where I personally don't like to get there that early. I don't want to start, and I've told you this, Byron, I don't want to start messing around with shit until I can kill something and capitalize on it. The last thing I'd want to do is go there 2 weeks early, kick up a 200-inch, just gnarly giant, and like have to just sit there and be like, oh shit. And then I interrupted him, and then I don't know, was he okay with it?
Oh,
did he leave?
God. 2 weeks away from it. That deer is got a million. You even remember what the hell happened?
Well, exactly. Yeah. But a lot of different shit's going to be going on 2 weeks later.
Yep.
The beans could not be green anymore. Shit that they're eating could not be. So I'd like to go there the day before and pound.
Well, this isn't about a property and knowing that you're going to kill. This is about learning a new property right away and finding out where the deer bed.
That's what I'm talking about. So
I don't want to know that during the season. I want to know that before.
And that's where your difference in scouting here comes into play. Like, so it's different if you're just walking a property to learn the property because you don't know it. To me, it is, at least. And it's different if I'm trying to find a deer where he's bedded. I'll go walk a property just to find bedding areas and randomly, but to learn the land versus like to actually then, okay, once I know what's going on, and then go deeper and try and kill a deer. Because to be honest with you, if I'm hunting a new property, I'm not obsessed with finding out where a deer's bedded right off the bat, because I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit too. I've went to properties and just poked around the edges, didn't really disturb anything, snuck in and killed one and left without having to go fucking tromple around, especially early too. I mean, you got guys are so gun-ho and eager, and like the woods are full. I mean, I don't know, but that would be a plus.
I'm getting them both.
I'm
getting them both at one time. So if I got a new property I've never hunted, I'm good chance to go. I'm going to go scout. I'm going to go figure out where the deer are bedded, and then when I come back for opener, I'm in the game hunting already instead of burning up a week and a half learning all that stuff. So I'm in the game right away. Then when I get down and I'm hunting, I'm still doing my poking around, but at least I'm in it pretty quick. So let's take to the next step then. Then you start getting into October, a little touchier deal where you're trying to find a deer where he's bedded and hunting. Those seem to be, even though it's a touchier time, it seems to be a more one you can capitalize more on. This would be about the bed, finding exactly where that deer is bedding, and then manipulating and hunting it. Then you move on to the rut. This is one I really like, and guys don't even realize everybody misses the boat. When a doe goes in the heat, every buck on the property's on her, and the whole property could go dry. Someone's got the mother load, somebody's in the right ravine, or somebody's in the right spot that's got all the action. If you sit there and just wait it out, you're burning up 4 good days of hunting without getting any action. But if you got down and went and did a little bumping and dumping, you can scout around. All of a sudden you go up a draw, you jump a bunch of bucks that are standing around, nothing's running away from you. You hit the mother load. There's a doe and heat in there. All the bucks are on top of her. You set up right in that ravine, and I'll guarantee you hang on to your hat, because you'll have the show of a lifetime.
Okay, let me back you guys up on some of this scouting that's going on for the October half, and even maybe that opener, the scenario you just laid out there, Cody, where you start on the piece the day the season opens. When you guys are scouting, I think there's an important aspect to covering ground that's just a waste of your time moving very fast. But let's talk about, like, when you're getting into these bedding areas, do you start slowing down? What kind of sign do you guys start picking up on? Because you've never been to the scenario ground that we just talked about. Like, what does your process look like so you get that visual when you bump that deer? Because I got to think that's the biggest key to doing this successfully, is visually seeing a cage that you're after.
Nope.
No. Okay, that's good. Good. Talk to me, Cody.
I've killed a deer that I bumped out, and I just heard him crash, and I knew, like, oh, that was a big freaking deer.
You saw the antlers just banging on.
Like you could just hear, like, and you can tell anybody who's heard like a doe run through the timber, like just like on an exit route, and in a 300-pound body, or a big,
or 120-inch set of antlers hitting tines, and then listen to 170-inch.
The different noise. So definitely, I just having your wits about you, and honestly, like I've went into bedding areas and just I never seen any deer.
See,
and you would literally go in there and you could smell though that there was just a buck there. Like you could literally smell it. And I'm like, man, he had to be here like just at least this morning. Like, and he probably seen me before I seen him, and which is fine. But I still found that spot, and that deer wasn't a deer I wanted to shoot. But he came in. That would have been an awesome bump and dump.
But I'm not out looking for bedding areas. I know of a bunch of bedding areas and find it. I'm looking for the specific animal I want to kill. So in that might not be in that major bedding area. And I laugh about, guys, if you've seen where some of these big bucks bed, you wouldn't, even after seeing it, you can't believe that sometimes they're there. And the only way to find that is to visually see the son of a bitch in it, as far as I'm concerned. And now you know for a fact. That's if you believe your own eyes. Some guys don't.
Yeah.
It's just a fluke, so.
And Cody, I called you last year. I was on a scouting mission, and like I said, I have never successfully done the bump and dump. I'm working on my in-season scouting game is a big part of my area of improvement. And I jumped 2 solo deer, and I never got a visual. CRP grass, tried to run after one of them to see a cage, and I called you on the way home, and I was like, dude, I can't tell. I didn't have any buck sign. There was no rubs. There was no bigger tracks. Like I was like, I could have just bumped a doe or 100-inch deer, I guess. Are you guys looking for rubs and some of these other telltale signs that a potential good one was in there if you don't catch that visual?
There's not always rubs. A bedding area is not always tore up. I mean, size of bed is a good indication. But
are you asking how to identify like if there was a big buck in there? Or?
Yeah, just some of those clues. Cody, I remember you told me that, and I thought that was worth bringing up on the podcast. That they're not always shredded, because I think. I consider myself in that class of guys that is looking at guys that are on the next level, and finding these buck bedding areas. One of the key indicators is shredded trees of kind of bigger caliber rubs. You're
looking for that like holy grail, just tore up.
That's pretty obvious that's going in there then.
Yeah. Then I mean that's what gets.
What's the best thing? I'm telling you, Byron. When you go jump a deer and you see a 180-inch buck at about freaking 40 yards from you. You're freaking on the game, and you hit the mother load. So,
I think what he's asking is like he's
a lot of guys are out just aimlessly running around. They don't have a clue what's going on.
But he says like in a situation where you don't get the visual, if there's no rubs and scrapes around, does that mean it wasn't a buck? And I'm saying no. I'm like it's right.
Yeah. So at that point you're looking at the size of the bed and trying to catch a good track.
So you jump one that you don't know it's a buck.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Well, yeah, like he said, it's the sound of a doe running through the woods is freaking.
And you might have had maybe you weren't even thinking about it and whatever, but I think like going back to the original where this question started is on that new piece.
That was just a new piece.
Well, no, I'm just trying to. Like, no, you said you talked about like the next step or just scouting in general for beds. Yeah. I think majorly I'm just looking for deer in general. I mean, if on these big pieces, if you find the deer, you find where the deer are at, that's a good place to start hunting. I mean, you don't want to hunt where there's no sign, where you haven't seen any deer and you have not, like, why the hell would you even hunt there? So I think it's important that you do get on the deer and find the deer.
But there's times a year then that where all the deer are at, the big bucks ain't at. So, once that transfers into that, when they start getting a little more social and looking for does and heading in there, then it's the time to be in those type of bedding areas. But I'm talking about what I do specifically is got to do with, a big animal, finding out where he's bedded and hunting him there. I don't care about tons of other bucks, tons of other does. If I'm hunting a specific animal, I have to know. And the only way I've ever have known where a big deer is bedding is to visually see him come busting out of that bed.
And you got 2 different scenarios. If you're hunting a deer and you know there's a deer there you want to hunt and you're going to look for him, that's a different scenario.
Yeah.
Versus if you're just trying to kill a good deer. I would say those are 2 different things.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go search and just as soon as you see that good one.
But here's the thing that's great on that. Once you find that spot is golden for years to come now, unless they do some logging or some major changes up. It's, in my experience, that deer's dead and gone. The next big bull that's in the area is usually fucking the same haunt. It was a good spot. It's the best spot, and them bigger mature deer are on it year to year. So now you don't have to go bump them anymore. Now I got spots, I got stands in there. I don't ever go in anymore because I've already got it manipulated,
And we've talked about that. We've talked about just good spots in general for a piece of property, but I don't think that one bedding area means that there's always going to be a buck there. Like it's not a
no,
for
but
sure
that
thing.
spot that deer was that you found that located that big buck was bedding on, that's a good area for the next big one that's in there. He'll be usually in that same spot. So let's go to the next one. Okay, where we stopped at the rut. Now let's go to late season bump and dump. Set up a stand in a major bedding area where now these deer are kind of back together, social. It's about food and about bedding. Have them stands in there, and you literally go in there, crash in there, get in there quick, get up in them stands. You might jump or bump one or two does that just gets the whole group of bucks, does, everything just blown out of there, right? Everything got spooked. Only 2 of those deer really seeing what the hell happened, seeing a person in there, get in that stand and sit tight, and you will shit. Within 20 minutes, the whole entire herd loops back around, looking around. They don't know what the hell this deal was. And I've had so many incidents. I could have shot so damn many good bucks by just they just got spooked for a second. They didn't know what happened, and they come right back into that bedding area. And you know, if you're positioned right in your stand, it's like taking candy from a baby.
Now, Andre, now with that bump, you had mentioned you like that crosswind. If you're bumping these deer, they're running because of sound or visual.
No, this is you're blowing them out of their bedding area on purpose.
Right, but
right.
What if they catch your scent? What if the buck catches your scent? Is that a totally different game than versus more of a visual bump or just a noise?
Well, if you
bump?
head in with the wind in your direction, there's probably going to be a couple that are going to visually get you.
Yeah.
And everything busts out of there with the wind in their nose, and you get in your stand. It's very seldom you get winded. You more get spotted visually than you do winded.
And that's just not as big of a no-no in the whitetail woods. Like them seeing you, not a huge issue, right?
You go down it. You're going to be hunting a property in Illinois this year, late season. Go run around those honey locust and bump a big buck off it, and set your stand up and get your tag out and slit the tag already, because they're going to turn right around and they're going to be right back on that spot within 20 minutes. I'm telling them,
I don't even know what has to do with that question. Like, that didn't even make any sense.
Cody, talk to me a little bit on bumping.
No, I think it's different. I think when you like getting smelled and getting seen, and I think that's more for like in a stand. Like I've noticed that if a deer gets like that wind, smells you, and then cracks you too, like it's like it's a whole different ball game. But on the ground though, I don't think like.
Yeah, what does that have to do with the question he asked about me going in?
He said, "Is it different?" He said,
"Yeah, is it different?" Like if I'm
would
scouting,
you rather have him see you or smell you?
Oh, for sure, see sight.
Yeah.
I mean, like, because then think about this: if your wind does get hairy or whatever, if you're playing that line, like if they got your scent and that you just kicked them up before, they're gonna know right off the bat. Like,
and that might still be one or two deer. What about the other 25 that are on that flat?
But now you're talking about aggressively hunting a big populated bedding area.
That's what I said. Late season. That's what I do.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like all these, what I think everywhere I'm getting confused here, and where you're going back and I'm going here, and you're talking.
No, but both. There's still good information coming.
But it changes throughout the entire year.
Right, but this whole conversation was about bump and dump. What I want to get to the point is that this is not, like you said, just about bumping a deer on his bed. That's one bump and dump. There's a whole bunch of other bumps and dumps. And I just took you to a scenario from early season to mid season to rut to late season, all different bump and dumps, dude.
And what's happening is a question's being asked about the bump and dump in October, and you're answering it like it's in late season, a heavy populated bedding area. That's what I'm saying. So we just
rephrase your question for the October one. What was that about?
Yeah. I think it would do well too, as far as for the audience, for the people listening. We talked about all these bumps, and we bounced between October, early season, now late season, but like the setup, the dumping aspect of things. I don't think we've gone over any sort of details. Early, we talked about, making sure we've got consistent wins for that next time in. But talk to me a little bit about, one, you've bumped this deer out, whether you've seen him or you've realized this is the target area you're going to manipulate.
This October, or when is it? What is the situation?
Let's
so we just bumped the deer out of a bed.
Yeah. Let's start.
Okay, we're hunting that buck. Now it's a buck we want. We want to come back and kill it.
Yep.
Okay.
Talk to me about your setup.
I would suggest never leaving and coming back the next day and going after that deer. Now, you did your damage. Get your stand set up that morning, and if you're coming back the very next morning, you're going to hunt them. If the wind is not right that morning, you can come back 2 days later when the wind is the same way it was, but you're already preset. You're not going to go back in there and bump them again and set up a stand later. You got to hunt that thing while it's hot, do your damage, and then get out, and then you just slide in before sunlight and get in your stand. Does that make any
Cody,
sense?
Talk to me about your setups for let's say the first 15 days of October. You've bumped a deer out of a bedding area. He's of the caliber you're after. What is going through your mind when you're setting that stand, when you're setting that trap?
Most of those deer, like I'm not concerned with the direction of the wind and where the deer was bedded for the most part, unless I feel like it is just like a sporadic bed. But most of the deer that I've killed on the beds have been early, like first couple days of October, first 15. And I feel like they were more, now I made this decision when I got to them, but those were more just primary areas like that deer. And so what I do instantly when I find that spot is I look at my phone and I see what the wind's going to be the next morning. And then I'll try and hunt that buck that evening on a hold. I'll do a big loop around and get on the nearest food source and in the direction he ran and where I kicked him. But I'm pretty confident in my mind that deer is not going to come back to that spot that evening. I'll do what I want with it, and then I'll get there early for the next morning. But I'm just wanting to
But that's a bedding area, not a bed he's talking about.
Yes, this is a bedding area. Not a single solitary bed, maybe a couple different beds.
Yeah.
Or like.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say that if you're hunting a specific bed, you don't ever go in there and hunt that right that spot in the morning. That's set up for your ambush coming in. You got to be a little off that to get them coming out of that bedding area for your evening post. And if I got a good bedding spot like that, I don't even mess with that deer on an evening. I let them have. I'm hunting something else on an evening. I'm diving in. That's the most favorite time for me to hunt is a morning sit right up on them bedding spots. It's been the most productive.
So if we look at a majority of our audience and guys out there hunting, they're guys that are working Monday through Friday. And so, Saturday, they're out there hunting. They've hunted the morning post. Now they're doing their scouting midday. When you bump that deer, you're kind of setting that up for that Sunday morning hunt. And Cody, you said something very interesting there. You're saying, okay, if that buck's a shooter and you don't think he's too boogered, you're going to go try and get him based on where he's essentially ran to and knowing the best food in the area kind of thing. Like it's almost like you get two cracks at him.
Yeah, for the evening. Yeah, evening. I mean, yeah, like and there's been times where you want to get out there. Because I think if you go around and you bust it, and even if you bump that deer again way off where you bumped him the first time, it's not going to change the fact that he's coming back to that main spot the next day. Yeah. So like I just like to save that for the next day. I like to make sure that
I still feel that there's a disconnect from what we're talking about with this. So that bump and dump was all about finding that spot in that bedding area. Once you found it, you got it. Mm-hmm. He's saying that's the most important thing. If you knew where a buck was bedding every day, I do the same thing. I try and get him coming out of there, and I know he's there. That's his consistent area. I get him on the evening. Mm-hmm. If it don't cooperate, I'm the first one to take the gloves off and dive in and get him on that. I've got so aggressive now that I love hunting mornings and bedding areas that most of the time I'm in on all those spots all the time, and I'm on the deer all the time.
And that brings up a point too that I've talked about before. It's not always about like you don't have just because you find where he's bedded, you don't have to go hunt him there.
That's the key.
Most people, like even like I was hunting out of state with a buddy too, and like we did kick up this deer, but I also knew from where this deer was bedded too, and there was a nice ag field right off the backside with a couple scrapes that lit up. I'm like, well, this deer's coming right here in the evening. I know it. Mm-hmm. And so I wasn't even going to go. I held off a couple days, like from going in there. Like, yeah, if I knew where he was at, I was keeping that in my back pocket. But like, I knew that deer was going to hit one of those scrapes in the next 3 days.
But now, did you do any bumping on that, or you just hunting that deer because you know he's in that?
No, it was an accident.
Oh, okay.
So I was scouting, I was looking around, poking around this area because I found these scrapes, and I found where the deer was bedded, and I found right where he was, mm-hmm. and he was bedded not too far off the field. And I'm like, oh, well, okay, no brainer. Well, aren't you going to go kill him on his bed? You're Mr. Bed Hunter. And I'm like, well, why the fuck would I go kill him on his, like, why would I do that? Like, the reason I found him is because of all this hot sign on this field. So I'm not going to forget about that. And I'm not going to forget how easy it would be to just go sneak in, pop a stand up on the field edge and shoot that scrape at 20 yards. Like, you don't want to overlook shit like that.
And here's another big point we missed. I don't know how we missed it, but if you start paying attention to moon phase and all that, there are times that buck, and you can follow that buck is going to be in his bed before sunup. So now you don't want to go in there and try and, you're going to bump him right in the morning or booger that right then. wait for the times where they're going to come back in there a little later, and you can slip in and you manipulate that spot. So I did that with a huge buck in Illinois. I watched him from a distance because I was hunting another buck, hanging in that bedding area for 3 days, never left this little island of brush. He'd get up, he'd feed when the moon phase said he'd be up feeding, but he would not move more than 50 yards. And then all of a sudden, he started moving out more. And then the time that I dove in and got him, it was at like 8 o'clock before he came in. So he's out on the field edges, dove in there, plenty of time to set up and just another surgical remove deer.
Now we're getting more so strategic on just hunting deer, not really bumping dumping. But right.
Yeah,
I agree too.
Well, you know how I bumped that deer?
Hit me.
So I'm out scouting on an ATV, and I'm going down a peninsula where you can't. It's so treacherous you can't get off. I'm driving down and I'm watching this 170-inch freaking plus 8-point, just watching me on the bike, and now I'm watching him on the bike. And I get down and I think, well, I'm going to just bug out of here and loop around, and I know where he's bedded now. And now I'm stuck. I'm like, son of a bitch, I can't get out of here. I got to go back the same damn way that I went. And, and I'm going to just do the same thing. I just cruised, kept steady, made like I didn't make eye contact, and got the hell out of there. That deer never jumped out of there. And man, I was so close to him with an ATV, you'd think he would have just busted out of there. Now, it wasn't a bump, but it kind of was a bump. I know where that buck's at. And I just watched him the whole – matter of fact, on the way hunting, I'd see him from the freaking road with binoculars just set up in there.
Nice. Andrew, you had mentioned the moon phase. Are you referring to the overhead and underfoot times correlating with sunrise and sunset?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. I think some of the audience guys, you say moon phase, they may not necessarily know.
So the moon movement is position. Let's get this straight, because we had this on a couple things. It's irrelevant. The moon position is when the deer are active and moving, but the phases will bring you back later and later, and sometimes the moon movement is in the dark. So now you're kind of screwed that you're not going to see those deer. They're moving after dark. So
and
go ahead.
Yeah, that's what he meant about like sunrise and sunset, like when those movement times peak there.
So you know how you'll sit on a post, and then the deer will come out, and then the next day they come out 20 minutes later, and the next day they come out maybe 20 minutes later, and pretty soon there's a full moon and they don't come out. So that's
it's definitely a good idea to watch the moon phase, especially because it'll help you, I think, the situation in which you're hunting and like okay, prime example, if you do find that bed spot, like now most of the time, like I'm wanting to kick the deer out because I got to stand on my back and I'm wanting to set it up. But like with the bike thing, you're like, okay, I know where he's at. Like, but if you were going to go in and get that deer, right? I mean, it's early September, it's October, right? Like you're probably pretty confident he's going to keep using that spot, and it's a full moon. Like it's probably pretty safe to say like you won't be able to beat him to that spot. Like,
well, on a full moon you will be able, because here's what happens on a full moon: the deer move after dark, and late, and the evenings are horrible. This is before even moon charts, Murray. I've been hunting field edges in big country for years, and this is what I've learned. And on those days, your morning hunts are phenomenal late. So it's you follow that around. So this buck that I had the opportunity to be able to just glass on the way out, and from a road and stuff, that deer held up in that bedding area because it just, when it said it would be active, it said bedding area. So he never had to go out to the fields to feed. He never went out to the feed. He stayed there. Now that it changed and he's going to fields to feed and coming back in the morning to bed, there's your opportunity, man. You got an hour and a half of freaking light before he gets back to his bed. You're set up and you're ready to go. Instead of going there and trying getting him while he's right in there and bumping him off in the dark.
Yeah, but that changes so much. But on situational, it's not like these deer. Some of these deer are eating right where they're bedding. So that's what I just said. But I'm saying like you can't go by just moon on a bedding hunt, because like he might be going. There was one buck over here last year that was putting on 3/4 of a mile every night. Like
during the freaking pre-rut.
No, it wasn't. It was early.
Let me ask this, guys. I feel like a lot of these questions that we just ran through, scenarios, they're all on kind of either accidental or new type property, scouting type bumps. Do you guys, if you look at your past, doing this on purpose, where you like, I know this deer is in the area, or you've almost got him figured out, but you need that final piece of the puzzle?
Ooh, that's all I do. Byron, I'm trying to explain that to you.
Yeah.
It's not. The accidental was early in my career where I learned about this by walking in, bumping a deer, walking in again, bumping a deer and constantly bumping on a spot. That's how I learned this.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's no learning. I go in and specifically want to see where that deer's bedded so I can go in and surgically remove him. If I don't know where he's bedded, if you're going to be one of these guys that's going to take a map and say that I think this 180-inch buck is bedded here from what you see in the air, you might as well just freaking rip your tag up right now because you're probably not going to catch up with that deer. If you're planning on hunting him and killing him out of his bed,
that's good, because I do think a lot of guys in my shoes, the guys looking to evolve, you read a lot on these beds, and it's a lot of guys saying, oh, well, based on the map, this is where he should be. But it sounds like
I love that.
Yeah, it sounds like from coming from the guy who invented this, that's not the route to take. That's a good. I don't know. That's a good
I know I'm going to get a lot of slack for this. I still can't figure out for my life how you can take a map and figure out where a specific big buck is bedding and going and killing it. It's beyond me.
Now,
I think map stuff. When you're focusing on map, you're looking at general travel corridors, general pinch points, good areas that may hold deer. But when you start to get granular, and these guys who are picking out a ridge, oh yeah, the big one's going to be bedded right there.
You know where the big one is, Byron? Late season here when it's friggin' nasty winter. See this porch right in back of this farm here? 100 yards from this property, there's 190-inch bucks bedded sometimes on that mound there when the wind's right. So, if you can find that in your map, go ahead and freaking search for it. But I don't know if you'd look there. So
that's good.
Well,
you know what
said,
I think?
That buck that I killed last year, Cody had him. He was bedding, and there was nothing there, just grass and a freaking CRP between the crop fields. He found that by cameras and going and poking around and learning that.
Well, okay, so I think you're taking us to a cool area. I think the audience would get a kick out of you guys telling either maybe the most recent bump and dump or a cool story related to the bump and dump, and maybe I can ask a question of, well, why did you do this, or tell me more details about X, Y, and Z, because you guys process stuff at such a high level. I think sometimes we got to slow you down a bit.
Okay, so a perfect one would be the flyer buck.
It's your story. Go
for it. Okay. So this verifies everything that nobody wants to know, that, you bump a deer out, that he's not coming back. So the flyer buck setup was locating where he bedded by a bump. Coming back later, I went and set up with a pouring rain, got my stand set up. The day that I got in there, he came in and bedded up on this knob, but was just out of range. So now I'm sitting there, and what am I going to do? Am I going to sit until evening and then have him, if he gets up, maybe he'll come within range of me? Or I was blessed that a group of dogs were on that deer's trail, and they blew him right out of that bed. And you can see it all on video, okay? So now you got a group of dogs, and the position he came in, everything was right. The dogs were following his trail. They dropped down into a ravine that he came up. He brought his tracks up in a nice steep ravine. As soon as they disappeared down in that ravine, boom, he blows out of there. They get up on the knob, they get to his tracks, and they run him off. So, now, what anybody else would think, that spot's shot for tomorrow, right?
Sure.
Would you think that?
Several years ago, yes, I would have said those dogs blew that place out. Yeah.
The wind was the same the next day. I slid my stand over 5 yards, and that deer came in that exact bed the exact same way, and he got killed.
So can I ask this, Andre? How did you put yourself in that first stand to see the visual of the dogs? And did you know about him in the area? And how was this? I bumped him off that knob before. I'm sorry, say that again.
I bumped him off that knob before. That's how I knew he was bedding on that knob.
Okay, so was that a day before, a week before?
Got him to that area. Is that what you're saying?
What's that?
Did you bump him a day before, a week before?
That was a week before. Actually, that buck, Cody was bedding in a whole different area 2 weeks earlier, but that's the spot he started bedding because he was going off the property, and that was the first little thick area that he would start bedding, and then he would head off through all open ground, open farm country. He'd probably be out there all night, and then come back to that oasis in bed.
Okay, and when you bumped him, you visually saw him, realized that's the caliber you're after?
Yeah.
Oh no, that was a specific deer.
Yeah,
when you seen that
I videoed
deer,
him.
You knew it was that deer.
Yeah,
when you seen
coming
it.
out of there on a couple evening posts. I mean, it's.
Okay.
Yeah, you didn't miss that one.
Nice. Now, I'm trying to think if I've got any questions.
Now, if I didn't go poke around, if I didn't look around, or if I spent my time just trying to pick a spot on a map with a You know, to me, it almost seems like you'd be better off to put that map up on the wall and take a frickin' dart and just throw it at it. Or this balloon deal, maybe find a balloon that landed on your frickin' property and go hunt there or something.
Andrae, was there anything special about the killing tree that you selected, or could it just that you knew where you needed to be based on the dog bump from the day before?
Oh yeah, if he's going back to that same bed, I'm talking 5 yards, dude.
Okay.
To be able to put an arrow in. So I just because there's some thick stuff there, I just had to slide that over. So if he came back to that spot, I can get an arrow him. Otherwise, I just sit there and watch him again go to his bed without being able to kill him.
Okay. Cody, man, what about you? Any bump and dump story that you can walk our audience through that they're gonna get some details from?
Let me see. Okay, so mine. All right, I'm trying to find a picture.
Hey, move that mic a little closer to you.
Oh, that Illinois.
Sorry.
Yeah, now you're better.
I'm trying to find an example of. Okay, so it's not really like I guess a bells and whistles story, but it's just it comes to. I'm trying to think of a better one, maybe for like setup or something, but. So I think I know that like the bump and dump, and we can't argue the definition because the guy who invented it is right here. But I think when people think that bump and dump and more iconic is like, okay, you kill the next morning or that day. Like, yeah, I get that. Yeah, if you bump them early, it's all bump and dump. But
sometimes that's the case.
But I think like those are the most iconic stories. So like that, yeah. So I'll choose one of those. This deer. So I knew deer were frequenting this certain area of property, so this was a early season, and normally I would sit there. I guess I wouldn't poke around too much, like Dad's saying, like he's always in there trying to find a deer or whatever. I don't think I do that as much because I do think there's a chance that I'll run into him before I find that spot, like if I'm on deer. But that wasn't the case. I wasn't seeing anything. So I just started taking a stand in. And every day I'd take the stand down and scout deeper into the woods. And every day I would just like do the same exact thing, sort of kind of like what he was saying about in the big woods, but this is just on a 400-acre piece of property. Like,
okay, good. I'm
just
glad
knew
you
that.
Easing in.
Yeah, I was just like easing into the heart of the property and just like kept going. And then I finally one day, like it only took like 3 days, but because I would obviously look for better trails or better sign or whatever. But then as I was easing in, I was able to spot. I actually glassed them, which I never used glass a lot, and now I carry it a lot. So I actually I wasn't even really moving a lot, but I was glassing all this open stuff, and it's like a hedge and shit in there. So it's all low, and you can and I actually seen him, and I'm like, oh man, like that looks like a good buck. And I couldn't really tell what he was, but I knew like I needed that spot. Before I even did anything, I pulled up my phone and I looked, I'm like, okay, I got my compass there, and I'm like, what's the wind going to do tomorrow? Because I knew like I needed to hunt that deer tomorrow. Where the hell and I'm looking at him, and the wind was switching. The wind was switching that evening, but then it was gonna be a different direction in the next day. But I didn't care. Like I'm just like that, and I don't usually think about that too much. Like I just
if it was like a knob area where that deer could bedded there with any wind direction, you can make it to that knob and then J hook in.
And this is open hedge, but I'm not 100% like vested that I don't know what this area looks like anyway yet. But I'm just like, oh, I'm hunting this. Like I got to kill that deer. He's over there. What's the wind going to be tomorrow? Because I'm going to be hunting this general area, and I need to set a stand. So I pull my stand down, and then I see we had a rain coming. So I'm like, oh, it's even perfect, right? So then I go in there, and I actually run at the deer, like as fast as I want, because he had no idea I was there. I just wanted to spook him, get the hell out of there. And he got out of there, and then I was able to it's hedge, so you got it. So I had to walk back out, go all the way to get my stuff, because I didn't have my trim saw on me, come back in, set the stuff. I spent the entire evening messing that place up and just like,
that's the ultimate bump and dump. You just bulldozed them out of there.
Well, I just ran them out, and then I started trimming it took me 3 hours to trim that spot because, I guess that's not the next step. So I bumped him out, went in there, looked at it, seen there was a couple beds there. He was obviously hanging out here. It was on kind of a shelf there. So there's this shelf that overlooked this I guess, well, it's all really thick timber in there, but it's going down to a crop field. And I knew that's where he was probably going out to feed at night or whatever. So he's coming back up. So even if you hooked around, I had a really good spot where my wind with the thermals, I needed to get high in the tree from where I was because it's so like rolly in there and you get winded very easily. So I knew I had to trim. So I literally went out, took me like an hour to get back into that spot, grabbed a trim saw and probably trimmed till it was about a half hour before it got dark. Like it was about to get dark. I didn't even hunt that evening and just trimmed like a bunch. So, and I knew as soon as I got back to the camper, went to sleep, it started pouring. And I'm like, oh, this is great. Just washed all my scent away. I literally was back in there all over.
Virgin scent.
Snuck in there at I mean, I'm always running late. The sun was actually coming up when I got in there. But I got up in the stand that I set. I always set stands when I'm that close to beds. I always set them to where I have a seated shot and I don't have to move. And I just I tell myself, okay, sit here with your bow on your knee till 8:00. Just because like there's been times like, and I've learned this through trial and error that I have my bow hanging up. I'm not paying attention. That little bit of movement when they come in, they might get a swirl of wind or they might, a lot of times if you don't get a rain, like they're going to know you were there and they're going to smell if you were messing around a lot and trimming stuff. So I just always want to be quick and not move. And I just was sitting there and the sun came up and it was about like, I think it was 10-7 maybe. Like it was super early.
Okay.
He comes strolling right in. In this area, it wasn't like super ripped up or anything.
Cody,
like,
did you give us a date on this? I can't remember.
This was like September 3rd.
Oh, wow.
October 3rd.
Okay, October 3rd. Okay.
No, not September. It was October 3rd. So
that's early.
And like, I think I got to the property, or it was the 4th, because I got to the property. I scouted pretty good the first day. I stayed back, just figured out what fields these deer were frequenting. And then I just was like, okay, I'll slowly ease back in here. So by day 3, I found the spot. And by day 4, I ended up killing deer. So it was just like more different than I guess it typically happens, but
yeah. There was a comment on our Facebook and you brought it up there, you got the rain to kind of wash your scent away. And the guy was like, are you guys concerned about leaving the ground scent as you're scouting, looking to set the bump and dump? If you look at some of these guys.
No, because you're going to be there. You're going to be there to capitalize on that deer getting killed.
That's why I said don't go out of there a day and come back, because now like the deer comes back to that bed and smells that you were there and maybe doesn't come back there for a day or two.
And that's why, like, if you're not going to hunt it, don't go booger it up and check it out. Like, don't go stomp around it and look around and like look at his track and try and measure it and take a picture of it and like whatever you want to do. But if you got a stand on your back and you're about to hunt that, then go in there, do it. And don't worry, because the whole point, I think, of the iconic bump and dump where you kill them right away is that they get there and before they know anything's up, you harvest them.
Yeah.
But it's like,
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask, you had said that deer was like right at sunrise, like clearly,
And I didn't pay attention to the moon. Like I don't look at the moon as much as he does.
No, he doesn't.
And I just because I'm like out there and I'm just trying to hunt, like now I will look at like those times for the field edge. And if it's like a prime moon time, like sometimes it sways me to go hunt a field edge. And I'll let that dictate, like, I guess the area I'm hunting. But when it comes to, if it's a poor moon and they're not, I'll hunt closer to the bedding area. Just like in general.
That's going to be a whole podcast.
Yeah, and that's a deep dive in
because I get guys that get glazed over.
But I didn't look at the moon or anything. I just knew, like, oh man, okay, I'm here. Like
you're hunting in the moment,
Yeah, exactly.
I got two kind of questions or follow-ups to what we just talked about. One, are you guys killing a lot of these deer bump and dump mornings that first hour of daylight because those bucks? I don't know, that if you look at the industry, everyone says that these bucks are getting close to their beds and they're not traveling a lot, especially in October in the morning, that they're getting very close, if not in the bedding vicinity as daylight's cracking.
Tell that to Justin, the one he killed at 8:30 in the morning, moving around a field edge yet. So
I've seen that video.
Yeah. So no, that's again, you got to go back to that when the movement pattern is it could be as late as 10 in the morning. I'll sit sometimes and not see something. And if that moon phase is later, some of them deer crawl back in them beds really late if it starts getting toward pre-rut where they're poking around a little more than they're, spending more time. So
that's a good point too, because there's been a lot. I'm sure this has happened to me. I mean, dozens of times, but there's 3 times I can specifically think of where a buck that I would have killed, like that I was setting up on his bed. I'm getting out of there at 9 o'clock, and he comes strolling in, and I'm like, oh. And everybody's like, and anybody told, why the hell were you getting down at 9 o'clock? I just can't sit there.
We're weak.
So
we leave at prime time and shit,
But there's been that time where I literally had to stand on my back and I had my bow in my hand and I'm just like, okay, where should I go? And I like turned my shoulder and there's a buck looking right at, and I'm like, oh fuck. I'm just
like, minutes later, you'd have had to.
Yeah, if it would have been 15 minutes.
Let me ask you this, Byron. From hearing just the conversation we had right now, do you have any idea or concept how to go after a deer and bump and dump next year?
Oh yeah, and I have tried it. And
you're gonna do it during the rut. You're gonna do it early. You're gonna do it late season. You're gonna try it all of them.
I would say early. Just because if I look at my bow hunting, like I have some good historic rut spots. I understand doe bedding pretty good, but like for me that early half of October, I think that's the biggest piece to the puzzle that I can work with is doing these in-season scouting, potentially jumping deer. I attempted it last year, but
that running after them though, somebody's going to catch you. They're running after them deer. Somebody's going to catch you on video doing that. It's going to be very embarrassing for you.
But what happens if I run after them, see a shooter, and then they're in the back of my tailgate because I pulled it off the next day?
No, I've done the same thing. The worst thing in the world is to jump a buck that you hear the rack is going, and then not getting an idea or look at what it was, because now it's like, was it just a 150 or was it 180? You don't know.
Yeah, and that's you can. It doesn't always. I mean, there's been a lot of times too that everything works.
I tried to get for this.
Not a shooter.
Last year, I took my game camera, I put it on a stick, and I was actually going to try early to try and get a couple bucks where I would jump them, so you could get a video of them running off, and then come back. And maybe set up, and the 2 times that I did it, I could only hear it. I couldn't get it was thick enough that they got out of there and got through. But I knew where 2 bucks were bedded now early, just didn't know what caliber they were. So
I saw a pretty good question. I think this comes from the guys trying to get better as hunters. They said, if you bump deer in the off season, how much do you put any stock to that being the piece of information as far as, okay, shooter jumped off this bed, summer, winter, whatever, I'm going to try and kill him there, again, or is there just so much that can change, that's what
like Cody said, that even 2 weeks could be almost a lifetime in a whitetails.
Well, I just know when I used to work on the dock, I head off, I'd leave Thursdays and I'd head out to my hunting property and that's all I could hunt was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And every time I'd get down there, I feel like, and this was earlier on years ago, I'd get there, and right when I found out what was going on and I felt like I was starting to be dangerous, I'd have to leave. And then I have to do the same thing every weekend. Like I'd almost have to relearn what was going on. I mean,
everybody did that years ago. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. But I don't know. Like and I guess it's not a giant piece of property, and you're not having to but when you're trying to get granular and kill a deer at 15 yards, shit does.
So
change.
Early, them deer are under food sources bedding, right? A lot of times they're right in. Alan had one he was watching right up to the beginning of the season that was literally bedding and a monster deer in a bean field. No timber anywhere. Every day he just glassed it. It would step up in a bean field. He'd be there and be milling around. Now, that deer ain't staying there when the crops start changing, the leaves falling. He slid back into the timber. Now you got to go relocate him. So, there is, but once they find those good spots, it seems like especially October, they're a solid spot. It really can be manipulated on those spots to hunt them. And I know a lot of guys, I can just hear them are thinking now, and I think the same thing. You got to remember, we got some pretty big pieces of property. We can run and hunt deer in this corner that aren't even akin to the deer in this corner here. If you got yourself a 20-acre piece, you could have did your bumping already. You know where your buck's bed already. You don't need to be messing around with that anymore. You already got it figured out.
Yeah,
and that's where.
And then you just got to hope the day that you go in, that buck is in there.
Yeah. I know we're getting late in the game here, but what about? Could you guys point out maybe a couple things that you think that people get wrong as far as guys that all are trying to evolve and try this tactic, but they mess up a few times, and it seems to be these trends. Do you have some bullet points? I think it was interesting. You said it's not necessarily about a single bed. That's not necessarily the main focus.
Well, like he said, okay, this is some pretty aggressive stuff. This is, I don't know if your average guy is going to be able to really delve deep in that, but like he was talking about, we have bucks. We know a buck's bedding. It comes out of a certain, maybe a funnel or some tight spot, or it crawls up out of a frickin' bluff and comes out to the field a certain way. We have no idea what cliff or where that deer's bedding, but we know it's just over the hill bedding. We just leave that alone, and on an evening hunt, you know where he's coming out of, and you manipulate the spot. You can't even dive in that spot to get him in the morning. I went and looked at a spot when we were shed hunting this morning where these deer normally come to. I just want to see what's going on back there that these deer are all bedding. Yeah. I'm telling you that these are billy goats.
Yeah.
The ledges are on. There is no way you are going to be there. There's no trees. They're on literally rock croppings. And it's almost impossible to get in a spot like that.
And to whereas, like, okay, there's a smart play. Like, we both know what that looks like back there. We're not going to go.
Yeah, now we don't
start pushing,
we know they're there.
Deer out there.
Oh, yeah.
And I think people get so obsessed where they overlook, oh, that deer can be killed on this food source. Yeah. Like, and they're so obsessed with getting in there, and they think they have to find this bed, and they have to find, or, and they might, and actually in that,
go ahead.
No, you keep going.
No, you go.
I forgot what I was going to say now.
Okay. The easiest thing, I think, a guy to start out with doing a little bump and dump would be during the rut, I think. Especially on you guys on private ground, all the guys, the chaos and shit. When a deer goes in them does go in the heat and the buck's on those, I don't care if there's 100 guys in that woodlot. That buck is going with that doe.
You're talking about public ground?
Yeah, I'm talking about any high pressure.
I thought you said private, so I didn't know if you were specific.
No, like public, private, anything where the shit's hitting the fan. Get out, scout, read the red hot sign, and go set up. And you'll bump deer, and you're not going to bump them out. Or if there's a doe in heat in there, that buck's staying with that doe, and it don't give a shit if you're there.
Yeah, so I think there's two things probably, like with them saying that. I think one is people are afraid to bump deer still, even after hearing this concept. But then also people bump the hell out of deer way too much, and they try and get too caught up in it. Like,
why would you do that?
Well, that's,
I know. I mean,
it's one of those things, right? It sounds like irrational, but that's where I think people are. They still don't. Oh no, I can't. Or I'm only on this like
the sanctuary.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. I mean,
I stay out of the sanctuary until you don't cooperate. And
then also what the sanctuary looks like. You've seen it.
Yeah.
You've been to the sanctuary.
Right.
Some of these people don't even have any clue what's going on there, even 40 acres. And then so that's where it becomes, I think, a little dangerous.
Yeah.
And that's just a person different in a different point of hunting.
Byron, a guy that's just getting going and hunting a few weekends out of a year, he hasn't seen what we've seen. I used to hunt that public hunting ground. I used to hate it when the grouse hunters would come out and they'd be running around all morning and shit, and we're trying to whitetail hunt. I would literally watch in open hardwoods, and I couldn't even believe what I was seeing. I would watch two guys with their shotguns with their dog out in front of them, and these huge bucks would jump up, and they wouldn't even run off. They would stay literally out in front of the direction those people were hunting. Mm-hmm. And I'm watching this from afar, seeing it. They're not seeing it because they're down low in the thick. And then all of a sudden that buck would do a half moon around, let them walk on by, and just nonchalantly head back to where it was bedding. And they didn't even give a shit about those guys and those dogs. They'd run circles around you, So,
and if you're hunting close to bedding areas, and like it's the same thing like I think you mentioned before with predators, but you watch these deer, you see what they do, like when there's a potential threat or danger, like they're not always going crazy and bugging out. Like you said, that they'll stand, sometimes they don't even stand up.
Where would you go if somebody just chased you out of your freaking bed and shit? Would you go where he's headed, or where he just was gone and he's out of there now, not coming back?
I think it's more important too that like, well, would you really leave if it wasn't an immediate threat? And I think like that's like,
and you got to remember those coyotes a lot of time are looking for a wounded deer or something that's not all that healthy. So these healthy deer that run off in there, the coyotes ain't getting them. They just shag them a little bit, and then bucks go right back to their bed and just settle in.
Okay.
I've just seen too much of it that it's, and I believe with my eyes. I've always believed what my eyes see. Never what I hear from other people or concepts in that. So.
Any other kind of final thoughts for guys? I know we went through a lot of the Facebook questions, a lot of the concerns from J hooks to ground scent. I think this was a pretty decent 101 bump and dump course. Obviously, it's probably going to come down to just attempting it a lot, and learning from guys.
Yeah, you're going to learn.
Yeah.
Scouting. Well, what did the J hook? Now you're talking about. Did that concept come from what I used to talk about years ago for like doing a two-man drives where you kick a deer up, it heads off with its nose into the wind, and then it does the loop back around. Is that
I have seen
because I got a product right now that's called the J hook too. I don't know where this came from. So
you laugh if you look up bump and dump or deer bedding talks on all the forums. You definitely hear a lot about guys talking about that J hook entry into the beds.
Yeah.
Where they leave that trail that they can visually watch, and it sets them up for wind over their back, but they're also seeing their entry trail for those predators.
I didn't know they were calling it the J hook, so we probably
that's a fairly common, I feel like, term on the interwebs and some of those forum groups. Guys, anything else as far as a manufacturing update that we should let the people know about? The Mobile Hunters United page, obviously we want to see people interacting there. Whitetail Addictions, we're heavy into that, going every Thursday.
Awesome. Enjoying the shows. That's so you want to start with anything manufacturing or?
Yeah, so for all of you that have current orders or have recently placed an order, I mean, good news, we are fully our new manufacturing facility is in full production. The cut, I guess the outline of what's going on right now is they're currently cutting 1.0s, and we'll begin to assemble and ship as soon as the first run batch of those is done. Immediately after is going to be
I'm actually heading out this week for a week, and I'm gonna be right there for the start of production. So Monday through next week, 1.0s will be being built and shipped. Then I think they're gonna we picked
up
Andrae
and Cody
D'Acquisto.
Yeah. So if you get one of the
good for a good buck, anyone that's assembled
if
by
you
me,
get one of these first stands, odds are it was assembled by him.
Yeah. What about
something's wrong? Something's wrong.
So then after, I didn't hear you, Byron. But after the 1.0s is the going straight to the climbing sticks. We wanted to get those done right away. There's a lot of people who've been waiting for those. We apologize for the severe delay, but you will not be disappointed in your stand purchase. I know we did have a little rough road, and we had some people.
Oh, stuff's like jewelry now. It's
well, we had some people that were a little touched with the cut marks and the actual process and which was happening with the material when it was being cut out by the water jet. Well, now it's going through an extensive finishing process that everything is extremely smooth and these things are very rich looking.
We got a new look,
Yes, they do. It's the hammered titanium finish. So
blends in everywhere.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome in the timber, man. It's got that dull kind of. It's weird. It's like a gray, green, brown. Like it's. See,
I think it picks up any color you're next to, but he thinks I'm nuts.
No, I mean, and that does anything that I think is three-dimensional that you can see through. But this does have it does have a certain hue to the material that definitely, if you have shadows of a bark coming up through it, it's going to pick up those tones of that bark. Like if you set it on something dark, I mean, that happens, I think, with just the nature of see-through, or like a erratic pattern, but.
And it's set up for if a guy's going to paint it, right? If he wants to paint it, go ahead. Use that color as a base coat, put some camo on there, or put a little soft touch around the edge. Customize it. That's what everybody's doing now. Customize your own stand,
Yeah.
I'm thinking things are so sexy. I'll just hunt the way it is. So
yeah, a couple new additions would be the engraving and the actual traction. The platforms have traction in them now. It's pretty.
We used to paint.
Cool.
We used to paint it on, put metal granule things in there for traction on there, so that the traction was literally added on instead of built in, and now it's built in the stand. So it's
essentially a lot more built-in quality than
and that was a reason for not going with paint, so that didn't get filled in. So now it's a nice. You almost got like a rough finish from the peened hammer for traction, and then you got the a little more aggressive lugs, and then you got the whole pocket. So it's phenomenal.
Nice.
Yeah. So I mean, as of right now, everything is just in that line. 1.0 sticks. That's when, and then soon right after that is the 0.5.
0.5 is going to be huge, and I think I missed the boat on it. You are right on it. I think it is going to be a huge hit. So just the way it's designed, we designed it so it's almost. You get pretty close to having almost the same standing room if you're going to stand on it and hunt as in the 1.0. So
it's definitely optimized for standing room. And I think the best thing about this is it's going to go wild with the saddle hunting community, because I think there's going to be a lot of these people who have been saddle hunting for a while, who have been realizing that they're missing that advantage, or that of being able to hunt in a tree stand style.
You could saddle hunt and then just pop down for a little bit if you want. You got a small seat. That's not a real, it's not an all day sitter, but it's
yeah. So I think that'll be that'll go over really well.
All right. Well, I think that's all the major housekeeping items. Cody, you want to take us to the exit here?
So if you have a product order, be patient. We're working on it, and we will get it out to you as soon as we can.
Follow us on social media. Be sure to check out the latest episode of Whitetail Addictions. And then by all means, head over to that forum group, Mobile Hunters United. Guys, thanks for listening.